Voyagers update absolutely changed the game up for No Man's Sky. I don't recall ever spending this much time in an update because by this point I would have normally been done. But there are so many amazing builds in the community and so many possible options to have that we have to go over some of the craziest builds right now in No Man's Sky Voyagers. And with glitch building getting discovered even more, there's bound to be even more crazier builds in the future. But in the meantime, here are the top 5 that I absolutely love right now. Today's video has been brought to you by Opera GX, or what I like to call the ultimate gamer browser. It definitely has the vibes, built-in ad blocker, and lots of customization to pull that off. As somebody who enjoys modifying things to my own liking, the GX mods section offers some crazy themes, altering everything from the graphics, sound effects, backgrounds, and much more. You guys already know how much I enjoy Cyberpunk, but you are free to mix and match different mods to create the style that fits you best. Furthermore, if you want to browse while also checking your favorite YouTube video, there's a neat video pop-up feature that lets you separate that into its own floating adjustable frame. It even features a neat ad blocker built in, so you never have to get interrupted again. And the best part, you can save and later import these settings as well as any bookmarks you might have whenever you change to a different setup. So totally check out Opera GX using my links down below and also the pinned comment. And I'm gonna give another big thanks to the Opera GX team for being the sponsors of today's video. Starting with the first one, which is obviously the one you guys asked in my previous videos. This is my Blackwing of sorts. It's basically a stealth bomber which I used in the beginning stages of the update and I absolutely loved. We're going to start things off with a couple of landing pads and then 3.5 habitation zones outright. So half one will be in front and right on top of it I'm planning another full habitation zone. That is because we can now place a reactor behind it, which is going to make for some pretty nice middle engine part of our ship. And then we're going to focus essentially on the back side with the engines, as this is one of the more complex parts of this whole build. So 2 on each side, and then we're going to use some of these triangular shapes plus the S-foils to give it this really nice back wing of sorts, hence the name for it. Plus 2 of these rotors on each side, which, like I said, really gives it a really nice sort of look. Now from this point on, we can use those engines directly on the first and the third habitation zone. However, if you want to extend it a little bit more, you can definitely do so via some of these other parts right here. I don't really think it's worth it and it kind of ruins the aesthetic, but the choice is up to you. In my case, I just prefer going with them as close as possible to the main habitation zones. And from this point on, what's going to really bring your build together is essentially the second tab over here with all of these triangular shapes. All of these can be mixed and matched in many ways. You can even switch them horizontally and vertically, so this is going to help a ton if you want to give it a more angular look or a more rounded look. But in this case, we want to go with a stealth bomber, so that's essentially what we're doing. I'm also going to place down 2 triangular parts here to complete the build on each side, but I will leave the portion below them exposed. That is because we can actually squeeze in a ton of upgrades over here, pretty much like 4 at the very least, if not even up to 6, so I can place down all of the shield modules and still have room for 2 cargo upgrades, which just makes the build complete and handles everything so easily while still fitting. And from this point on, it's just a matter of putting the finishing touches, so all of the offensive capabilities, you have plenty of room both below and above the ship for any of the modules you want. Photon cannon, phase beam, rocket launchers, you can even clip them through some of these parts. If you don't want to, you can just place them somewhere else, but in this case, that's what I'm going with. And the final touches are essentially just a number of extra vents, because obviously we're using a fighter jet, and obviously coloring this up, pretty much going to go with full on black. It's a stealth fighter and I believe it looks really nice. So you can take advantage of this and have some fun with it, even with a minimal amount of resources. Now from here, I'm gonna go with the polar opposite of this build, essentially one that is much more complex and thus much more expensive because it's so difficult to build, and that is getting the Normandy from Mass Effect. Reason is because we don't have many parts to get the rounded shape of it all, but I found some stuff that can actually help and get it pretty damn close. So in this case, we're gonna start with like 5 or so habitation zones, just place them around, because for the time being, we're gonna focus on the backside and specifically the 2 engines. So we're gonna use these triangular shapes further spread apart, one at the lower level and one at the higher level, and we're gonna stick some engines to them, but for that we're going to first need some of these habitation zones, 2 for the lower one beneath the upper one. So once we place the engine, as you can see, it clips directly over there. So once we go ahead and delete the habitation zones, they pretty much remain without any glitches. It's the closest thing, but it's not completed just yet. We still need the front part. However, this kind of starts resembling some of that Normandy aesthetic a little bit. For the back engine part, it's actually going to be rather similar to the previous one. So in this case, we're going to still make use of that Blackwing sort of area with S-foil and whatnot. Below it, we're going to have an engine in between that. And of course, our entryway. Plus, you can go ahead and customize it with some extra stuff here and there. But for the most part, it should be complete this way. The difficult part actually starts around here when we have to actually make the rounded shape for the Normandy. But in this case, we do have some options. I did want to include the Arcadia wing module in this case because I like it so much and it gives it a really technological look. So I did place that at the beginning because I could continue it relatively decent with a Vesper diffuser, or in this case, the thinner diffuser, which has the rounded shape. That is why we have 3 levels of habitation zones over here, simply because it helps with the rounded shape. I could go with just 1, but then it would ruin the aesthetic of the pilot seat. But I didn't find any way to put the pilot seat and not ruin the rounded shape, so it's not like you have a workaround at the time being. That is why for now we're aiming for like 75% roundness over here and just go with it. And in the end, we're gonna make use of some of the other triangular parts and try to cover as much of the pilot seat as we can. Unfortunately, unless you put it somewhere else a little bit more hidden, you don't really have a way to make the front of the ship look as close as it was in the case of the real Normandy. But it's not too bad, and if you want to also cover the middle sections, we do have a few options. You can diverge a little bit and maybe even place down some windows if you want to look outside, as you do have a lot of room in there. You can also go ahead and place down some of these other rounder parts of it from the Arcadia set. So for example, you can definitely go with the Speedbird diffuser and it kind of fits nicely, or even the engine cover, which is similarly round and also glitches or stacks on top of the previous diffusers. The choice is yours, but I think that we're pretty nicely over there in terms of the aesthetic we can reach given the circumstances. And once you're done, what you can do is also extend some of the side engine wings. In this case, if you want to make them as long as they are in the lore, you're not going to have a good time doing it. That is why I decided to only go with 1 extension, so they are normally like only 50% of what they should be, or maybe 75% of what they should be. They should have another like 25% length on top if I were to be realistic. But in this case, we can again go ahead, sacrifice some of those diffusers on the side, place down some of these habitation zones just enough to extend the engine with, in this case, a Speedbird nacella, and then delete that habitation zone and place back all of the rounded shapes once again and kind of have the look going. Is it the best Normandy ever from any game? I don't think so, but is it close to the Normandy given the circumstances? I think it is, and it's also functional. You do have quite a lot going on inside, so you can definitely create like crew quarters and whatnot. So yeah, if you do find a better build, or if you can create a better build yourself, maybe even basing yourself off of this, go ahead and do it, and I would love to see your results. Now for the third one, this is as easy as it is impressive once you get it done, and it really made some rounds in the No Man's Sky community, but this is basically the capital ship from Star Wars, and there are a few ways to make it really cool. So what we're gonna do here is start with some really spaced out landing pads, and then we're gonna go with a 5-3-1 formula on 2 stories. What I'm gonna do in the meantime is sacrifice one of the middle sections and split it in 2. One will be pretty much the entrance, just because I like to have it over here, and because we're gonna have a pretty crowded space here, we're gonna go with a triangular shape. Otherwise, we're going to be clipping. Trust me, this step is very important. And we're going to go ahead and fully occupy everything with the 5-3-1 formula once again at the top. From here, we're going to go to the backside and essentially focus on, yeah, basically just the engine part. So in this case, I'm going to make use of some of these triangular shapes, but I do need some bases for them. So for the time being, I'm just going to use some of the reactors. But essentially, the triangular parts, both top and bottom, will give us that gap we need in between which we will put the engines in just a little bit. And the middle sections of it at the top and the bottom are an excellent place to just put down some of these reactors, as we do need them anyway. Plus, we're gonna go with the 3 large engines, and you have enough room for the 2 smaller ones as well, and it already looks really nice. But we're gonna follow the lore. So what I'm gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and further complete this with some more triangular shapes so that it looks as close as possible to the real thing. That is why making use of some of these foils helps so much to really make that whole engine section pop up. And that is basically going to be it for here. But from this point on, the middle section, we're gonna go with like 3 stories up, plus 2 on each side, and going with some triangular shapes. This is the easiest part of the ship, so you can go ahead and get rid of it right now. The more difficult section remaining is going to be for the front and getting this thing triangular, but we can actually do that relatively easy with just 3 components. So for the front part of the ship, we're gonna go with these 2 triangular shapes, the longest ones possible, and of course then going with the triangular sides so that we can actually get the triangular shape going. We're gonna do this both for the top and for the bottom, and also we're gonna switch them around. From this point on, we're gonna go ahead with this other triangular shape that we're going to use for the continuation on each of the sides. So we're going to complete this both above and below, plus left and also right. And from this point on, what we can do to actually continue the build is make use of this long shore cowling to just extend the build and clip into the previous section. This is going to both cover that up nicely, but also let us continue with literally the same setup from this point on. So let me show you what I mean. Placing the last ones down, and then we're gonna default back to the long triangular shapes. So once again, repeating the same process again. And you're kind of almost 80% done. You can go ahead and fully finish this on this side as well if you want to. You're totally free to do so. But I just really like the Arcadia ship style, so I'm just gonna go ahead and complete this. It kind of gives it almost a Venator look, but not really. It still fits the theme, and it kind of gives it a really nice breakpoint over there instead of being a very simple triangle. If you want an extra extension at the end, you can sacrifice the 2 engines, temporarily put up some habitation zones, and then place the triangular parts right here from the last section. And then you can just delete those and place down the engines once again, and you're pretty much good to go. The only other trick I have for you over here is that you can actually create some pretty nice unofficial, I would say, let's just say radar modules that also move on each of the sides. So I'm gonna start with 3 of these sandwiches I can create right here on top of each other. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to sacrifice the one in the middle first, so I can place down this shield module right in the middle. So stack it here, and from this point on, delete the one below. From here, we're gonna go and make use of the round cargo slot, and then delete the one at the top, and basically we have a really nice sort of satellite slash radar. And we're gonna repeat the same process once again, but keep in mind that whatever you do, you're going to get really close to the 100 part limit with this build. You're pretty much going to be right there if you follow this build exactly, but you're going to have enough room for everything, all of the defensive and offensive capabilities, plus enough parts to do anything you want. And that is essentially the whole build right here. Now at number 4, this build I got inspiration over from Reddit, but I absolutely loved it the moment I've seen it. I tried recreating it, but also kind of adding some new stuff to it. So this is literally going to be a Corvette railgun, and I tried as best as I could to actually get this starter section going that looks, in my opinion, just absolutely amazing. So you're gonna find the link down below to the original thread about it, but this is essentially my build breakdown of it. So what we're gonna do is essentially start with a very spaced up and very long sort of build on 5 or so different levels. That is why we're going to start with the first 5 of these habitation zones, or 4 at the very least, and then with 2 gaps in between them, we're going to make these long lines both up and down. That's essentially going to be the railgun itself. And what we're gonna do is at the bottom, I'm going to place down 2 of these connecting triangular parts, as that's going to form the rounded bottom, quote unquote. As that's going to be in a continuation, or well, the continuation for that will be the speed bird nacella, these rounded, a little bit more fat shapes that we can put right next to them. So we're going to repeat this process on each of the sides for this ship. And for the time being, I'm going to place down the captain's cabin. But more important, I'm going to go ahead and place down this round sort of, I guess, I'm not even sure what this is, satellite dish or radar dome, whatever this is. This is going to give us an idea where everything needs to stand. So place it down, as that's going to be the start of everything. And from this point on, now on the 4th, or what's essentially the 5th floor actually, we're going to go ahead and repeat the same process above as we did below. The only thing left to do is obviously take care of the backside. So here is where we can put down one of these entrances. We can also further complete that with more triangular shapes, by the way, in the continuation of it. So it kind of has a more distinguished feeling and it doesn't interrupt or appear too flat. But you can also go ahead and make use of some of these other triangular shapes, the longer versions, obviously, to give it more spikes essentially in the back. Whatever you do, just follow this and you should be golden with the same setup that I'm going with. And this is going to handle the middle section. For now, we're almost done with everything we need. Everything else from this point on is like very simple to pull off. So in the front, we can go ahead and just create the endings. In this case, I want them to appear like pretty much very sharp. So that is why I'm going to use the smaller triangles with the longer triangle side version, so that it kind of almost has teeth going on for it. You can also go ahead and place down a bunch of these engines if you want to. That's what I'm going with the build. I think it just looks a lot better. The only other thing remaining over here is to just get the final touches going. So in case you need to readjust stuff, in case you need to place down some of these maybe photon cannons or maybe the phase beams. The phase beams, I always place them in the front section, one atop, one below, so that they kind of combine and it kind of acts like a railgun. We're going to do more for the railgun in just a little bit. Also keep in mind that you can still stick your landing pads into the circular bottoms, so it's free to actually do so and you're not going to have any restrictions. Everything else is going to be about this middle section over here. So what I'm going to try to do here is show you something really cool. We can go into our regular build menu, and there are 2 modules here that I want to install. So the first one is going to be right here. Essentially, you have to unlock the black hole in the wall sign. Search on Google, and this is what we're going to be using. We can actually put base decorations on our builds. So in this case, what I'm going to be doing is select this part and just go ahead and resize it so that it fits that satellite dish that we have on the side. In case you don't get it on your first try, don't delete it, just grab it all together and then reshape it until you actually get the proper size. And once it is of the proper size, copy it directly and bring it to the other side, and basically you're gonna be done. But I really wanted to make this have a lot more flair to it and a lot more RGB essentially, so I went with a cyclonic lathe in this case and just stacked a ton of these. I know, right in front of my pilot's cabin, but I think it ended up so cool. You don't have any glitch building here to take advantage of perfect positioning, but if you're just being careful, even my noob hands over here, you can see, they got placed really well. Pretty nice, in a nice, long, straight shape, and in my opinion, it also came pretty much exactly into the middle. So it also looks good from the captain's cabin, and it gives you that vibe of a railgun loading and whatnot. So overall, absolutely loving this build. There's even an alternative of it that I went ahead and created with even crazier parts, so you can totally stick the Arcadia parts in it and go with something even more nuts at the top section if you want to really turn this into a Corvette, if that's what you're looking for. The choice is yours, of course, but if you start with this, you're going to have enough of the basics to then evolve into something even greater. But this brings us to the last, however definitely not least, the build on today's list, which is going to be the upgraded version of the Mech. And of course I'm going to give another huge shout out to whatever the Reddit user was or Twitter user was that gave me the idea with of course the legs for the Mech to become a little bit less stiff. So there are some really nice builds going on over there in the community right now that will help you with that. So let me show you one of them, which is going to be this. We're going to start with the legs, and instead of using habitation modules, we're going to use some of these joints, which are not quite as thick, even though they do occupy the same amount of space, and we can also glitch build through them. So let me show you what I mean by that. We're going to take this middle section here, we're going to sacrifice a couple of them, and we're going to make use of the triangular shapes to create a crazy sort of ankle slash let's just say knee section, using the triangles connecting into each other. So as you can see, starting with the larger one and then 3 smaller ones, we get this really cool knee area right away. And for the connection part with, let's just say, the feet, or the foot in this case, we can either use one of the cargo cylinders, either the larger but longer one or the smaller but thicker one. The choice is yours. In my opinion, both of them look great. And then you can just replace any of these with any of the other connecting joints. The point of the matter is that you're going to also hide these anyway with other triangular shapes, just like how I am doing it on each of the sides, and that's going to make it already look 10 times better than before. We're going to, of course, rinse and repeat this on the other side as well. So one large triangle with 3 smaller ones connecting to each other all the way, with the foot over at the bottom. Repeat this, and now you have this really nice base of a Mech going on. I also like applying some of these scaffolding slash let's just say skeleton modules right here at the top. We can of course also place a reactor right here in the middle to kind of make it as a connective joint if you want to, but you can also sacrifice that and go with the more skeleton looking ones, and just choose one of these triangular parts, flip it upside down, and get another pretty nice solid base that's not too thick and also looks pretty cool. And again, we're going to repeat the same process, 5 stories up, and then making connections with any of these cargo slots. Since, of course, it's also an upgrade, we can obviously also make use of it so that we get extra inventory for our ship. And from this point on, making use of upside down triangular shapes will be your friend. You're going to get so much out of this and essentially build the Mech much better than you ever would. That is why I recommend in this case to go with as many of them as you can up until you obviously get at least to the upper torso section, which coincidentally is where your base will be. So you're going to have a lot of room over here to place down larger habitation zones, or as small as you want if you want to sacrifice them. The point of the matter is that for the chest area, we can again use some of the triangular parts, the foils and whatnot, to essentially get the chest area going. Now, if it kind of ends up looking like tatas, like in my case, just go ahead and delete them and replace them with something else, or bear in mind that you're going to replace, or at the very least cover them up with other sections later down the line. But from this point on, it's literally up to you how you want to finish the upper section area. This is where you're going to put down a whole bunch of engines and whatnot, plus the head right at the top, and this is essentially what I've been doing. Now, what's another important section over here is obviously going to be for the hands. One thing to note is that before we actually put the hands, we actually have enough place for this back wing, which I really love. The rock hopper wing module, which just comes in perfectly over there over the module. Meanwhile, for the arms, we're going to use a similar trick to that we used for the middle section. So in this case, we're going to again make use of some of these connective joints, and then we're going to just get one of these cargo capsules stuck right next to it. What we can do is essentially sacrifice that previous joint and then just place something else instead of it so that it doesn't appear quite as bulky. This is going to be something we're going to do for both of the hands, and as you can see, it just makes the hands look a lot cleaner and less bulky. And from this point on, again, taking great inspiration from that build itself, we can go ahead and create some really crazy sort of laser beams and place down all of our damage dealers and whatnot. You can even switch up, and if you want some animated parts, obviously many of the engines do have moving parts and electricity, so they work really nicely. And you can also make use of, in the case of the other arm, obviously this other engine part, which looks just as nice. Just keep in mind that once you're done, you're going to be overloaded with upgrades. So again, if you want to save on some of those, you can just come back at a later date once you do have them. And this is the build, ladies and gentlemen. This is how insane it goes. Obviously, you can mix and match some of these parts however you see fit. I really wanted to get it close to that of the original user, just as a nice way of showing my appreciation for this really crazy build. So obviously check out their Twitter account as well if you want to. I'm not sure if my build is even close to it, but I really like that leg section, which is why I started it. This is pretty much it with the video. Let me know down below in the comments which one of these you like the most and which one are you going to actually implement in your build, or if there's any other cool ships you want to see. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.